It's great to have you here in the Irish Traditional Music Archive, Christy Moore. We're also excited to welcome you here, and there's a lot of people that you need a big introduction to. I think with your name and all you've done for traditional music and song over the last 50 years, stands on its own 2 feet, and in a way you need no introduction. It's just such a privilege to have you here, and I think very fitting as well that we're here in 73 Merrion Square, which is the house where Robert Ward Joyce, the son of P.W. Joyce, who was one of the great collectors of Irish traditional music, but in particular of ballad songs and broadsheets and ballad sheets, and published a lot of songs. I know you've a close connection with P.W. Joyce's work, and I'm picturing back to a young 16 or 15-year-old Christy Moore going into Newbridge Library and picking a book out on loan. I'm not sure if you returned it, but you made great use of that book. Can you tell us a little bit about your early experience of learning songs from collections?
Indeed, I can, and thank you. You started off by talking about privilege, and I would just like to say that it's a privilege. My life has been privileged by traditional music and by songs. And, I've gained an entry into even being here today through my association with Liam O'Goflynn. And indeed all the players and all the singers I've met across the years have endowed a wonderful privilege upon my life. So I'd like to say that before I start, and thank you very much for inviting me in here today. My first time out for nearly 13 or 14 months, so it's a great feeling being out and to leave the house today with the guitar on my back. Whether I get to play it or not is another thing, of course. But I recall discovering the P.W. Joyce collection in the library in Newbridge when I was about 16. And I took it out and brought it home with me, and leafing through it, the first thing that caught my eye was the Chor of Kildare. And subsequent to that, the Rambler from Clare and the Enniskillen Dragoon. I can remember those 3 songs specifically. And going around to Donald Lunny's house with the book, and we picked out the melody on the piano, and he picked it out on the guitar. And I remember we took one of the verses of the Chor of Kildare and turned it into the chorus. And that was the start of that song for us, So from early start, I was attracted to old songs.
What do you see, or what do you look for in songs? So when you're leafing through a collection like that, when you were yourself and Dawn were going through that collection, which was collected, a lot of those songs collected in the 1830s, 40s, 50s, gathered around that time, and were still relevant to you and Donal, who were at would go to the very cutting edge of a new sound in Irish traditional music and song, almost 100 and
well, back then
years later.
We weren't at the cutting edge of anything, really. We were, I know my eye and my ear was turned by hearing the Clancy Brothers when I was, say, 15 or 16. Prior to that, I was just listening to rock and roll and playing rock and roll on the piano. And I know Donal, prior to that, played drums in a band in Newbridge. And we were probably both turned by the Clancy Brothers. And then Donal had a band in Newbridge for a while called the Liffey Siders, who were great. And so that was the start for me. But then I became aware of there are other avenues to seek, and Joyce was the first collection I came across, and a while after that then I got the first Colm O'Loughlin book, and I just started finding songs that nobody else had, and that was a great thing to go into a ballad session back in the 60s with effectively a new song. I can remember turning up with Mary from Dunglow and the Chor of Kildare and the Enniskillen Dragoon, songs that hadn't been heard certainly around our circuit at the time,
Yeah, it reminds me of the Kennelly phrase, all songs are living ghosts awaiting a living voice, you know, and you know that there's so many great songs, and we're conscious of it here, obviously in the archive. You know, that idea of we like to have at least one copy of every published collection of Irish music, at least one copy here on the shelves for people. That there's gems in our past that can fall out of the tradition or the popular repertoire, and but it takes a certain skill, like you know.
But that quote there of Brendan Kennelly, is it?
Yeah.
That quote of Brendan, as you said that, I'm reminded of John Reilly songs. That I can take a song like The Well Below the Valley or Lord Baker, which I learned directly from the singing of John, who learnt it from the oral tradition. And I've sung those songs all around the world, and they've stilled the night. Whatever spirit John Reilly imbued seems to carry on. And people are affected by those songs in a way that I don't fully understand. It's a magical, spiritual thing within the songs. It's the same with Green Grows the Lily-O and a number of John's songs, What Put the Blood. I sing those songs and something just happens, not only to me, but to the listener.
Yeah, it's amazing that some of these old themes can be continuously relevant, you know, and then so much changes in human, you know, in our technology and all the options, but emotionally humans, you'd wonder how much we've changed in 300-400 years.
Well, deep down we're still touched by the same sounds and the same melodies, and you know, it's something that I can't explain. But I'm so glad to have witnessed it and experienced it.
Yeah, you mentioned John Reilly there as well, and that's, you know, in terms of, you know, there's collections that you would have accessed, and I know Colm O'Loughlin you spoke about as well before, your well-worn copies of O'Loughlin's works, and of course later we'll talk about Frank Hart and Tom Munley. But now that you mentioned John Reilly, I'd love you to speak a little bit about your own collecting as such in the field, in a very natural way of going around learning songs from other singers, you know, in your early days. What was that? What did that look like?
Well, the John Reilly connection started purely by chance. The Graham sisters, Francie, Marie and Helen, they used to come down and play in Prosperous in Kildare occasionally. And they were wild and wonderful singers and players. You know, they were totally unique. And we became very friendly with them, and we travelled up to Boyle, to a gang of us in Mick Curran's Bedford van, up to Boyle to hear the Graham sisters. And late at night, Mrs. Graham said, "A bit of order now, please, we're going to have a song from John Reilly." And this man who had been sitting quietly over in the corner began to sing, and something just happened. You know, and I got to know John a little bit. Quiet, gentle man, settled man into Boyle. And his just singing was so beautiful, as can be heard on that album, The Bonny Green Tree. Yeah. Thankfully, Tom Munley captured John's singing, and thankfully, Topic put out the album. And I didn't get to know John that well personally, but he's still with me in the songs. A number of years ago, we had a concert in Boyle to raise funds for a commemoration stone for John. And his spirit was in the room that night. And somebody came up with a piece of tinsmithing that he'd done. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful miniature bucket. But it was beautiful. And obviously he had beauty in his hands as well as in his soul and in his singing. And I have such fond memories of him, even though I didn't know him that well, because of the songs.
Yeah,
I learned some of the songs from the singing of Francis Graham, some of them from Tom Munley, and some from Frank Hart. I never, because back then, when you hear John Reilly singing, there's no means to record him. It's not like now.
Yeah,
it's hard for younger generations to realise that if Tom Munley had not heard John Reilly, none of us would have heard him.
Yeah.
It would have all died with him.
Yeah. When you learnt that from, say, songs of John Reilly from Tom, or through Tom Moloney, was that through his transcriptions or recordings, or what? Had you access to Tom Moloney's collections?
As I remember, the first John Reilly song I covered was Tipping It Up to Nancy. On there being a woman in our town, a woman you all know well. Francie Gavin used to sing that.
Yeah.
And then subsequent to that, Tom Moloney gave me a cassette which had the Raggle Taggle Gypsy on it, and also The Well Below the Valley. And I think from Frank Hart I got Lord Baker, Green Grows the Laurel, and What Put the Blood. So there were three different sources of John songs for me.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to all of them.
Yeah.
And of course Francie Gavin is still to the good.
Yeah. And the rest is history, as they say, isn't it? Like the songs went on their own journey across the world.
And it's a lovely thing, you know. I suppose it's sad when we think back to the way John lived the latter end of his life. You know, it's sad the way he died of ill health and bad nutrition at a very early age. I remember we were all shocked when we heard John's age. You know, we assumed he was an elderly man, and I think he was 47 when he died. He had a hard life, and such a lovely, quiet, gentle man.
We haven't got a great track record in the state of looking after artists or tradition bearers like that, and it's when you think of the wonderful gifts that people have got enjoying these type of songs, and you know, the source of that well for them is
well, I often reflect upon John. I mean, you take John singing a song like Lord Baker. When Tom Moloney presented the recording of Lord Baker, a lot of the scholarly folklorists couldn't believe that the song had been collected in Ireland because it had never been heard in Ireland before. And then you think of how John got that song. John was a man who, as far as I know, he did not read or write, and yet he had this amazing library of songs within him, which he learnt from the singing of his father while they were living hard on the road.
Yeah.
And I always have to get this picture of John as a young child, maybe in a bow tent, and his father singing this song in a bow tent at the side of the road.
Yeah.
And it's a very powerful image, you know, very emotional.
Yeah.
You know. And
it's an amazing ability. I think, like, with all the resource we have now of looking up lyrics online or on apps or books, and when you think of how oral tradition survived, like Sir John Reilly, you know, that they could hear a song once or twice, and that memory that they had. You know, we sometimes think of it, illiterate people, you know, and then you think, well, you try and learn a song of one.
And you wonder who's the illiterate one.
Song, yeah, who's illiterate?
Yeah.
In another stage, then, when you began to take songs and add verses to it, can you speak to us a little bit about that? And then that period of making the jump to writing your own songs.
Well, I suppose I took a bit of a chance sticking in verses hither and thither. Say in Lord Baker, for example. When John got to the end of Lord Baker, it was quite difficult to follow the narrative. And I did inject a couple of lines here and there the same with the ship's captain. I remember my wife hearing the song and saying it was like as if there was a verse missing. So I stuck in a second verse, which should make the narrative flow a bit better. Not to everybody's approval, I should say. But with Lord Baker, there was a verse, and then Lord Baker ran to his darling, of 21 steps he's made but 3. He threw his arms around Turkey's daughter and kissed his true love most tenderly. And I remember singing that verse once, singing the song in the presence of Tom Moloney, and I sang that verse and he never flinched. And I wonder, did he notice? I'll never know now. I'd love to think he didn't notice.
Yeah. Yeah. There's any consolation. I know B.W. Joyce, I read in his papers, he added a few verses into his published collections as well, you know, so that's all part of the tradition.
It's
isn't
a living tradition.
Taking what you're given and adding bits and pieces, or dropping bits and pieces.
And so then I listen to what you fellas do with some of the tunes. My God Almighty, it's wonderful.
Or blasphemous. We got our own hassle too, yeah. But and your own contribution as well to the tradition, and that canon of song as well. It's something I'd like to talk about. That can you recall your first songs that you wrote, and what was that process and what did that feel like?
Well, the first full song that I wrote was called 90 Miles to Dublin Town. And I wrote it as a result of being asked to go into the H blocks and to meet a man on the blanket who wanted to know if I'd write a song about the blanket protest, which I did. And that was the first kind of song that I crafted and sang and recorded. Before that, there were a couple of songs that I did play around with a bit. But then after 90 Miles to Dublin, I began to write more regularly. But I've never become a full-blooded songwriter as such. You know, I'm just interested in songs wherever they come from. And I would prefer to sing a good song from you than a bad song I'd written myself, you know. Do
you constantly sit down? Do you need some type of creative initiative or request, or can it just hit you out walking, or is it with guitar, with pen, lyrics,
it's
melody?
different things happen. I can remember driving one day down through Tipperary, and at the time Marion Finucane used to do Liveline, and there was a woman talking on the radio about the terrible abuse she'd suffered from her father, and I just stopped the car and started writing down things that became a song called Strange Ways. I was up in Derry at a Bloody Sunday commemoration, and I was talking to Eamon McCann, and I asked him for his reflections upon Bloody Sunday, and then I spoke to a few other people who had been present, and that became a song called Minds Locked Shut. And I was on Inishmaan when the two Keneallys were lost out of Inisheer. And we woke up in the morning, myself and Val were on holidays with our children, and the first thing I saw out the window was an elderly woman in a shawl with binoculars looking out to sea. And I thought that was weird, you know. And then Angela, the woman of the house, explained to me that there were two fishermen missing. And that week I wrote a song called The Two Keneallys. Another time I remember we were on Cape Clear, again on holidays, and Radio na Gaeltachta was on, and the news came on, and the only thing I recognised in the news was the name Veronica Guerin. And instantly I knew there's only one reason why Veronica Guerin is the headline news. And as the story emerged, then I began to write the song about the murder of Veronica Guerin. So all different things.
Yeah.
It's like the same with, for example, Joxer Goes to Stuttgart.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I was in the back of the van one night and we got a puncture, and the spare was punctured. And I was in the back of the van for a few hours on my own, and Sid went to try and get the wheel mended. And when he came back, I'd written. And the thing about things like Joxer Goes to Stuttgart or Listún Varna, you write those songs real quickly.
Yeah.
They just seem to kind of lash out, you know, and so that there's never any set plan, you know. I never have sat down now and said I must write a song about this. It's usually a flash of something, you know.
Yeah. It's not a timetable thing. It's from 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock. I'll have a song now. So So you don't know when it'll come or when life will throw these starts of songs.
Yeah, it's a number of years ago, myself and Val went to hear Bob Dylan. And I looked over there, and who was sitting a few rows away from me? Only Wally Page. And myself and Wally had a little bit of a chat, and we thought, wouldn't it be a great idea to write a song about Bob Dylan, you know?
Yeah.
And that was about 10 years ago. And we finally got it finished this year, a song about Bob Dylan, and I'm calling it Zosimus and Zimmerman. And I'm putting Bob Dylan and Zosimus together.
Yeah, brilliant.
You know, and maybe it might end up in here in the Trad Archive in 50 years.
Yeah, or before then, yeah, that's fair. In terms of your engagement with, say, instrumentalists as well, I've heard you speak about Liam O'Flynn, of course, amazing uilleann piper and such a hero to us all, and someone you've worked with a lot, and other pipers like Seamus Senis as well. I know you've wrote a song for a tribute to him, Easter Snow as well, and with Liam playing, and we've spoken before about Felix Doran and the Traveller tradition of piping, and Willie Clancy. So does the uilleann pipes have some kind of intangible or indirect influence on your art and your singing? And
I've no idea whether it has any influence on my singing, but I know it has an influence on my life, and there's something about the pipes that I can't explain it, but they affect me deeply, sometimes emotionally. The other night, I just started listening to Liam Ogue and Catherine Ennis playing Easter Snow on the pipes and the huge church organ, and it just got me. You know, beautiful, beautiful. It's an incredible instrument, you know. And like 99.9% of the people in Ireland, I'd no understanding of the instrument, how it worked, or how difficult it is to control a set of uilleann pipes. But gradually over the years, I came to absorb that, and I mean, I remember the first time I heard Liam Ogue playing, I'd no appreciation of what he was doing. I just know that it sounded beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, and the first time I heard him playing A Seed Was Sown, that's 6 or 7 years later, would have been maybe even 10 years later, the idea of asking him to play on an album, and just becoming friendly with him, and going on the road with him. And even then, even in Planxty, still not appreciating what this man was doing. This man who was sitting beside me, making this music, I didn't really appreciate it. You know, where the last time we played together would have been 2004. By then, I was in awe of what he was doing, because I knew what was going on. You know, and I understood his concentration. And I understood his character and his, you know. You know, I listen to him a lot now. You know, I listen to him a lot.
Yeah, you had an impeccable taste, really, and
control.
Precision. He played exactly the way. What I find challenging on the fiddle is the bridge the gap between what I want to play with up here and in here with what actually is coming out the other end. But when I think of Liam O'Flynn, you know, I think obviously we can't guess what was in his head, but I bet you it was very close to what we're hearing. You know, he had that he had that narrowed down, that between his creative ambitions and what he was doing. He had it off to a T.
Well, his poise when he was playing, and the positioning of his body and his concentration, and I didn't understand that when I was in my 20s, you know. But by the time I was in my 50s, I understood it, you know.
Well, it's aged fantastically as well, like Planxty, isn't it? It seems timeless, like that. You know, that it's and Liam's piping as well comes in at perfect times. You know, like well, I speak as a fan, you know, but I'd imagine there's very little you would change in those arrangements. That it ages well. I have to say, when I do hear it now, it's.
And when somebody put up the other day the recording of Easter Snow of the song, and I regret now that there's not more of Liam at the end of it. But even Andy's riffs in it are just so delicate, you know. And of course, Donald, to me, I've just realised recently, without Liam, Planxty would have been a ballad group, a fairly good ballad group. It was Liam O'Flynn who brought the majesty into the band and the wonderful colour and depth, you know. And even though I don't think we appreciated him in the early 70s, because we were all young and wild and half mad, but he held on to it.
Yeah. And it must have been a brave artistic move as well, you know.
Oh, for him?
Like, well, for all of you as well.
No, for him, not for us.
Yeah.
It wasn't a brave artistic move for us, but it was for Liam. Yeah. And he would have been criticised over, and I can remember people who criticised him whose names I won't mention, but Ennis was behind him. Seamus stood behind him and announced to the world that he liked what Liam was doing in Planxty. Yeah. And that was very important for Liam.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. There's a lovely reference to that in Liam's manuscripts are here in the archive here, and I was struck by that. There was some handwritten notes by Liam, and he's quoting. There's a letter or two from Ennis, but Liam had picked out some lines to the effect of, you know, Ennis suggesting a couple of ballads that would work with Planxty. You know, and Liam had some comment to the effect of, you know, that he took great solace
in that.
It was, you know, from in the world of piping, you know, you had a figurehead like, you know, like Seamus Ennis encouraging you to. It must have given him, you know, the G up to ignore the critics or any.
I think is the word the imprimatur. Is that the word?
Well, I don't know.
I think there's a word imprimatur, which kind of getting the nod from Ennis. Yeah. Was kind of okay. Yeah. I'm going to stick with this. Yeah. If it's okay with Seamus, feck the rest of them.
Yeah, and he was right too, and his time showed. And I think when I think of Liam as well, and all the great instruments that were left to him as well was, you know, really tangible demonstration of the regard he was held by Ennis, you know,
and Clancy.
Yeah.
And that those instruments went straight into the Peabody Uilleann, which is a great mark of the man. Yeah. There was no messing around there, you know. Everything was set up. And, exactly, and organised. And his collection that came here too came in. My colleague McEvoy is a great archivist and loves to see things organised and in a systematic way. And Liam's collection came in, she was this is almost organised as a professionally systematic archive in and of itself, you know. I didn't realise that now.
But
he was ordered, you know, in his music and his life, and there was a bit of a wild side there, which I'm glad to say I experienced betimes. I have a couple of outstanding memories of Liam's playing, and one would be back in 1972, and when Planxty were just getting together. I was living in Sandymount, and he came one night. We were after having a few drinks, and we came back, and just the two of us in the room, and he took out the pipes and he played, and it was just special. And then the last time I heard Liam play was in the house that the Prosperous album was recorded. He did a concert in the house, himself and the Glack, Paddy Glacken, and they played out of their skin that night, the two of them, you know. And great memories. Himself and Paddy Glacken, himself and Sean Keane, they were that fiddle and pipes combination. He had done off to. But the chanter and the fiddle actually become a singular thing. You know.
Can I ask you about Seamus Ennis, since we mentioned him there as well as, you know, a Uilleann piper on one hand, but also someone, a collector of song as well. Did he leave an influence on you, or what were your experiences with him?
Well, my first experience with Seamus was 1967 or 68. I was living in Yorkshire, and he came over to play in a few folk clubs, and he stayed with me. and I drove him around for a week, and it was difficult for him playing in the folk clubs. It was at a time when in the north of England folk clubs wouldn't have had much opportunity to hear pipers before, and Seamus was a little bit uncomfortable. But he stayed with me in Halifax for that week, and then he went off, and the next time I met him was in early Planksty days. He was living with Liam, and Liam's brother Micheál, all three of them gone now. And then many years later, I was living in Garristown in County Dublin, and Seamus was living out in the Knoll, and things weren't that great with him, and I used to call and visit him. And he certainly had an impact on me, and was very critical of me in ways that I appreciate now. He didn't like me using bad language. He pulled me up for using bad language, and that affected me, you know. And we were drinking.
Yeah.
We were drinking, and I remember at one stage I ran a gig and gave the proceeds to Seamus, and we drank. And but he was a very special man. He was a very special man. When Ace Donna was created, I mean, I don't know whether it's any right or not, but I contacted Ace Donna and suggested that they consider him. But I got a note back saying that they didn't feel he would be a suitable candidate to be elected to Ace Donna.
Yeah. Such a shame, really, and when you think of all he did for art in the country, you know,
and a lot of his recorded works were wiped.
Yeah.
He did a whole series of films for RTE that were taped over. And the wonderful, then he worked for the BBC, of course, as well.
Yeah. He was an amazing collector. Even I was up in the Hebrides at one stage.
Yeah.
He'd been up there collecting, and they still had great. I suppose as a collector, you know, someone like James arriving in, he played the pipes. He could give something back to the communities he's collecting from.
A beautiful hand.
Yeah.
You know, and the way he would capture different dialects and different versions of tunes. And there's a great bit of a recording of him playing, I think in Doolin, way back in the day, that Ciarán McMahon recorded him playing in Doolin. It was wild and wonderful playing. Yeah. And his fingers, God, his hands are so beautiful. Yeah. Big, long fingers. Yeah. I went to hear Catherine playing a couple of years ago in Dunleary, and that was awesome as well. And I didn't get to meet her because there was a lot of people around, and I just decided to leave her be. And then I got a beautiful letter from her saying how she would love to have met me because of the song Easter Snow. And then tragically to hear that she died. Yeah. She died. Yeah. She was an awesome player. Yeah. And you can hear the kind of the piping organ. There's a tonal
the
same neck of the
there,
woods, aren't there?
Yeah.
You know?
There's something like it. Tonally there.
And there's so many different things going on with the pipes, and so many different things going on with those organs and stops. And
so workout in itself. Yeah. Can I ask you? I know you mentioned his name once to me before, but did you see Tommy Potts play much in that period in Slattery's or
the only time I definitely know I heard Tommy Potts playing was at Willie Clancy's funeral. Yeah. And I just knew the name. And I went with Liam to Willie's funeral because Planksty were playing in Limerick that night. And I drove Liam, I went to the funeral, and afterwards we were in Friels. And the Friels was thronged. And this man came in the door whom I didn't recognise to be Tommy. And he didn't say anything, and he opened his fiddle case, he took out his fiddle and he played. And then he wept and put his fiddle away and left. And it's one of the most powerful things I've ever seen, you know. He wept in Friels without having spoken to anybody. And that has stayed with me. And I suppose then as I got to know little bits about Tommy Potts and read bits about him, and I heard you talk about him, and I can kind of understand what he did that day. That was his way of saying farewell to Willie Clan. Obviously they were very tight. They obviously must have known each other very well, because there was so much emotion in what Tommy did that day.
Do you know, speaking about that, like Tommy arriving in, I've picturing that in Friels, like an arriving in, and music being almost like an emotional outpouring, you know, and how do you channel that when you're going on to perform in a big venue or a small intimate venue? You know, what is the ideal mental preparation or setup? How do you steel yourself, prepare yourself for going on, you know, putting yourself in the best frame of mind to perform, or is there any ideal setting?
Oh, well, definitely. In my kind of, for the last 20 years of my working life, I would focus very carefully. I would spend, believe it or not, I would spend all day doing my gig. And that would apply to if I'm playing in Glasgow or London or Galway or Dublin or wherever. I will spend the day preparing for that particular performance. When I get to the venue then, I would like to sit for a couple of hours before I go out and play and just prepare myself. I know that's not giving you a very detailed explanation, but it's just focusing myself and getting myself into a certain frame of mind. Like for the last good few years as well, I've always been sober in my preparation, which earlier in my life wouldn't have been the case. Instead of preparing, I would have been drinking and socializing. So I take it very, very seriously, you know. I mean, even for this, whereas I haven't kind of sat down and made any notes, or I've been thinking a lot about this in the last couple of weeks. The fact that I was coming in here to sit and talk with you. So in some way, I'm kind of mentally prepared for it, you know.
Yeah.
So I take it really seriously.
Yeah.
Also, if I'm in a place, I would like to think if there's any reference I can make to the place, or if there's any local musician I can reference, or is there any song from the region that I have in my repertoire. I'd always like to do things like that, you know, 'cause that's the way I like it to be.
Yeah, yeah. You've an amazing ability to connect with people as well on stage. Now, for a lot of people, going out on stage as a solo artist, you know, just armed with what's in your mind and what's, you know, with an instrument, you know, is a scary place for a lot of people. But you seem to be exceptional in that regard, that you can find that comfortable state and communicate and storytell and move people's emotions as well. So it's
all to do with
it's a gift. Right?
It's a collective thing, and I mean I have explained it before that in my mind's eye, it's something that moves between the performer and the listener, and that space in between is where it happens, because I'm getting from the listener, as the listener is hearing me, a John Reilly song come through me out to the listener, and that emotion comes back to me, and that's what fuels what I do, and what I've been blessed to do for my life. You know, I feel very privileged in my life, you know, to have experienced what I've experienced, to have heard what I've heard, and I mean, to sit beside Paddy Canny and to sit beside, I mean, when I was 19, I went to Milton Malbay. I was working in the National Bank, and the first night I was there, I went in with my little guitar. Maisie Friel said Christy Moore was the first man ever to bring a guitar to Milton Malbay. And Willie said to me, "Do you play that bull fiddle?" And he asked me would I sing Liverpool Lou. Yeah. At the time, Liverpool Lou was a big hit with Dominic Behan. And I sang Liverpool Lou in Hennessy's, and Willie played the pipes. Yeah. Oh, Liverpool Lou. What a magic moment, you know. Yeah. I've had things like that in my life.
Yeah.
Playing with Paddy Canny and Tulla, and Vincent Griffin, and then the people I got to meet through knowing Liam, you know, Martin Rochford, and people like that, and my head is full of all these things I've encountered, you know, and thankfully it's still going on. I'm still meeting them.
That's just fantastic and very inspiring as well, Christy. Would you fancy singing a song or anything at any stage?
I'll sing a song if you'll play a tune.
That's a deal.
Is that a deal?
Yeah, fair enough, yeah. If you play along with me on the tune, that's the
I'll give you a vamp. I have an old I have a baron here. I don't know whether I got it off Seamus Ennis or Tony McMahon, but oh, the Easter snow, it has faded away. It was so rare and so beautiful till it melted back into the clay. It's well that I remember those days out in the knoll, listening to the piper's notes as gently they did fall. Oh, the music when Seamus he did play, but the thought crept over the mantle and turned it back into the clay. He gazed into the embers to call up lost verses again. He smiled in roguish recollection as his fingers gripped the glass to stem the pain. Oh, the Easter snow, it has faded away. It was so rare and so beautiful till it melted back into the clay.
Beautiful.
There's another verse I can't remember. But that was a little song I wrote for Seamus, or a memory of Seamus. The other one I was telling you about was oh, Zazzy. Oh, wait, no, stall the digger song. This is a world premiere. Old Zosimus was singing the Pharaoh's daughter as me and Valerie we left O'Donoghue's. On Butt Bridge we crossed the river Liffey. Down along the north wall we joined the queue. There was hippies there and buskers from Dunmanway. Flash Harrys down from Killiney Hill. There was queer hawks and limousines and helicopters, all there to hear the King of Vaudeville. He sang homesick subterranean, hard rain gonna fall when the boat comes in, Black Diamond Bay, the dirge and the hurricane. Hattie Carroll and Hollis Brown, summer days forever young, St. Augustine, Maggie's farm, and like a rolling stone. That's a bit of
Fantastic.
Zosimus and Zimmerman.
Yeah.
Can you imagine them two getting together?
Well, I can now. Yeah, that's great. And I suppose that brings us on to your current plans as well, Christy. You know, what's next?
Well, the last year I've had time to gather songs, you know, and I'm after getting some very, very fine songs from different writers. One from Ricky Lynch in Cork, one from Paul Doran from Ballybrack, one from Tom Toohey, who sent me a song which Gossoon, Gossoon, why do you walk alone? Must be the strangest feeling. Gossoon, Gossoon, you have got no one, all has lost its meaning. As the apple falls from the orchard tree, we grew slow as time. Walked through all those golden fields, through wheat, through barley and rye. And now you say to me, there must be a way, for all that time will give is another day. That's the start of a song from Tom Toohey, a songwriter whom I met down in Kildare, down in the bogs of Kildare, where he wrote a song called My Little Honda 50. I don't know if you've ever heard that one. And he now lives in Switzerland.
Wow.
And he sent me that song from Switzerland.
Yeah.
And Ricky Lynch is mentioned in that great song of John Spillan's, Magic Nights. Yeah. And there's a verse that contains a Ricky Lynch song. And he sent me this it's free, it's freezing cold, the snow falls down, there's ice on the barbed wire. Everything is ready, another train is due. Now it's coming down the line, making for the fire. Just another December day in 1942. That's a song from Ricky Lynch, which is, I think, maybe the most powerful song I've ever encountered in my life.
Wow.
So that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm assembling songs.
Yeah. So how does that work? Do songwriters send you, or you see, have you a network of songwriters that send you material? Yeah.
A never expanding network. People grace me with their songs. And every now and then I find one. I listen to them, and every now and then I find one that just, it's a bit like P.W. Joyce in 1961. I opened a page and I saw the Cur of Kildare. I'm still opening those pages, albeit now they're coming online and on CDs and different formats. But every now and then, you know, it's a song will come my way that I feel like I've got to have to sing this.
Yeah. So kind of effectively running your own one-man archive as well, with sources coming in from all over. So like when I started out, say back in 1961-62, that I know of, there were no songwriters in Ireland. You know, it was either the Clancy Brothers albums or Colin O'Loughlin or P.W. Joyce, and I never heard of a songwriter. Yeah.
You know, but now, God, there's songs been written. Every county in Ireland has numerous songwriters.
Yeah.
Some of them writing wonderful songs. Wait till you hear this one. This song was written by a young Dublin man who's over there in London now, writing songs and singing. His name is Rob Corcoran. He comes from the north side. And he sent me this song last year. Still they keep on ringing that bell through the blacked out windows of my bedstead hell. From the steeple high they still taunt me with all their smug impunity. Those bells ring with no guilt or shame, resounding time and time again. The truth was told, numbers fell, still I keep on ringing the bell. Through the blacked out windows of my bedsit hell, still I keep on ringing the bell. How I wish Justine was here, Ghriallais, Macree, Macushla dear. When she left me years ago, she said she couldn't live with the demons in my head. Sweet Justine, my Brixton queen, she never knew what they took from me. Some stories hurt too much to tell, like the fires that only drink can quell. Still they keep on ringing the bell, as I count me coins for a bottle of Glen. I'll get a drink down me and I'll make a start. I'll declare to God and the Sacred Heart, all them sanctimonious pricks out there, from Letterfrack to St. Peter's Square, from down the burning pits of hell, still I keep on ringing the bell. Through the blacked out windows of my bedsit hell, still I keep on ringing the bell. Still I keep on ringing the bell.
Oh, powerful. Yeah.
So
It's a great song.
that might have a bit of John Reilly in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
But these are the songs I feel that will be on these shelves in 50 years' time.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've seen that process, I know, with Nancy Spain or a song like that you've taken from contemporary songwriters that you've seen in your own lifetime, ending up on, you know, as part of that people's repertoire, and that's...
For some reason I'm reminded of the first time I ever heard Spansel Hill.
Yeah.
I was working in Tulla in County Clare, and I heard, this is about 1963, I heard in John Minogue's hotel in Tulla, I heard the song Spansel Hill. And about 50 years later, I learned the story of Spansel Hill, that it was written by a man called Michael Considine. He emigrated from East Clare when he was 16 or 17 to California.
Yeah.
And he died, before he was 23, he died in California, but sent that song home. So that song was really written by a homesick heart, you know, by a young man.
Yeah.
And now it's the magic of it all. Hundreds of people sing Spansel Hill now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And hearing the story of Michael Considine and the way the song was written imbues it with an enormous, it becomes an enormous story. You know, when you think of the circumstance of it being written.
Yeah. It must be very satisfying to have played a part in that process of
a small part,
you
you know, a small part.
Yeah.
I think it was a woman I heard sing it, and subsequently Robbie McMahon sang it, and we had it on the Prosperous album.
Yeah.
We did it. It's magic to be part of the process.
Yeah. Well, I think you captured that fantastically and articulated great and demonstrated as well. You know, that living tradition. You know, that something we reflect on here in the archive. You know, we're not dealing with a tradition that's finished. You know, so we can't.
It's not
park
a museum.
the bus.
This is not a museum.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
it's a living archive for a living tradition, and the only reason we do is that we think our past can inform our present, and that can shape a better future in a way, or a different future at least. And So I was hoping, Christy, we could get your advice for young people finding their own voice in music or song. What would you like to say to them?
God will say, it's so hard, like for me at 75 to be talking to a young person. Would I have listened to a 75-year-old man when I was 16? I don't know. I suppose in my life experience has been to listen carefully, try and find what touches your heart, and to try and follow that. Copy everybody you like until your own voice or sound emerges. Copy everything you like. Don't be afraid to copy people. You know, I copied everybody I liked, and then eventually I found my own voice. Work hard at it, but also if you're a singer, make sure that the words are clearly, that your diction. I find a tendency now with a lot of young singers that I can't hear what the lyric is. Now I know I'm going a bit deaf. I have actually hearing aids in, but I don't think it's to do with that. I think it's more to do with, maybe it's to do with all the different technical stuff that's going on in the world now. But to me, if you're going to sing a song, every word has to be audible, you know. And I suppose in some way that I can't explain, it probably applies to music as well. You know, the notes have to be distinctive, and the riffs and the shape of the tune. But I think if you're serious about it, you got to work hard at it.
Yeah.
It's work.
Yeah.
And the harder you work, the better you're going to sound.
Yeah. Yeah. Just you remember the Oscar Wilde phrase that, copying from one source is plagiarism, but copying from multiple sources is scholarship. And sometimes I think when finding your voice in
your own
music
voice
and
will
kind
emerge.
of like to follow what you like. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what you said is I'll reflect on that for myself. Yeah, that's.
I was very young when I heard Liam Clancy on the street. It was in a town in Wexford. There was a flag hole going on. God, I can't remember the name of the town now. There's Bunclody. The street flowing down the middle of the street, and Liam Clancy was on the street singing a song, and I'd only heard of him on record before that, and that affected me, the way he was singing, you know.
Yeah.
And then all the different singers I heard, Al O'Donnell and Johnny Moynihan, Luke Kelly. You know, I borrowed from everybody. Martin Carthy over in England, and Archie Fisher and Ewan McCall. Learn a little bit from everybody.
Yeah.
Some good singers coming up now, too, you know.
Yeah.
Derry Farrell is I think Derry has assumed the mantle of Luke. Yeah. You know, he's there have been lots of people singing like Luke over the years, but Derry, he's nailed it, you know.
Yeah.
I think Luke would approve of Derry's take on it, you know.
Yeah, that's great. We had him in here, actually, he's doing one of the Drawn from the Well episodes for us as well.
Yeah.
I know as well, through speaking to Derry and other singers in Lancome and my own colleague here, Alan Woods as well, you I won't use the phrase trad father or folk father, but you still remain very connected with younger singers. You're very aware of like you're not adrift from the younger generation. You're very much involved, keeping an eye.
I love hearing new voices emerging. You know, it's very, very interesting as well. You know, and it keeps you young as well. You know, it keeps you, well, it wouldn't keep you young, but it keeps you kind of in touch with young trends. And
I know I can speak for myself as well here, but you're very encouraging. You're very. I know people like Derry Farrell that you're talking about, and Radio Pete and the Lynches and people like that are very you get a great lift from you reaching out. I know I can't say that yourself.
Well, the very same thing happened to me. You know, I can remember hearing from Ewan McCall and Pete Seeger. Like, I remember getting a card once from Pete Seeger, and God Almighty, I mean, it's like getting 5 shots in the petrol tank. It's great, you know. It's just it lifts you. Yeah. Somebody you've been listening to suddenly hears you.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember writing to Ewan McCall once and asking him, would he consider writing a song about the situation in Ireland, you know. And he wrote back to me and said he didn't feel equipped to comment on what he considered to be a sectarian war. But the last song Ewan McCall wrote, apparently the last song he wrote, he sent it to me, called Green Island, a song about Ireland.
Yeah.
The island lies like a leaf upon the sea, green island like a leaf new fallen from the tree. Green turns to gold, and the wind gently shakes the barley. And a powerful song. Yeah. And, you know, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing, yeah. And if you just one final question, Christy, what's your advice or what's your vision for an archive of this type, you know, for Ireland?
Well, I think it's great that you're doing what you're doing. I think this concept of creating the well and bringing people in to describe how they've drawn from the well. I mean, I've seen some of the things that you've done so far, and to be part of that is thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep it alive, you know, keep it working, and it's great that people can come in now and go through all these volumes and listen to all the albums and all the different sounds and different styles of playing, and it's so vital that we have access to it, and that there's an alive atmosphere in here now. It's not like coming into a museum, it's like coming into a living building, and so just keep it up and keep playing the fiddle.
Well, thanks a million, Christy,
thank
for
you.
Your time, music, song and advice. Míle mágat. It's been brilliant.
Tá fáilte rud mo chora.
Oh, the Easter snow, it has faded away. It was so rare and so beautiful till it melted back into the clay. It's well that I remember those days out in the knoll, listening to the piper's notes as gently they did fall. Oh, the music when Seamus he did play, but the thought crept over the mantle.